Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. Pete Najarian and I will be bringing the 411 to you as far as what's up with all these drones. What are they doing? And who is profiting from it? Because there's a couple companies that are really doing well. We've got the 411 on the Rebel's Edge. Bang.
Hey, I got to just say one thing. Outside of the market, and yesterday we talked about it, John, you're a Chicago Bear. You've lived in Chicago since 1981. I'm a Minnesota Viking, played there in the 80s. So tell me this. What did you think of that game? Because I feel so bad for Chicago, John. I mean, they not only got kind of a can of whoop ass, as they say, but my goodness sakes, the offensive line for Caleb Williams, that better be what they focus on this coming year, because that guy's not going to be able to hold up or stand up too long if he's going to turn into, there were two cars that played in the NFL, and one of them just got absolutely loaded with it. I think he had 75 sacks in his rookie year. Jeez. So it just shows you need somebody to protect the quarterback. You might want that first pick quarterback, but you better have somebody who protects them, or they only last a couple of years and they're out.
Yeah, that's a fact. I mean, it's ugly, Pete, and they could fix it with free agency, spend some money, get a big tackle, get a big guard or whatever. But yeah, it was night and day difference between the Vikings O-line that gives Darnold time. Most. Of the time, he had pretty good time. Even when the Bears rushed 6, he'd scramble and he'd roll to the right, or usually he'd roll to the left, it seems, and he likes moving to that side. But yeah, it was great for the Vikings, bad for the Bears.
Yeah.
And, that's just the story of Chicago, except for 1985. All right. So, Pete, let's talk a little bit about macro, shall we?
Yep.
Retail sales for November increased by under 1%, 0.7% actually, surpassing expectations. That kind of puts the Fed in a spot where, are they worried that maybe prices are a little too robust, Pete, and spending is a little too robust? Is that one of the things that, we still have a 99% chance of a cut on the 18th tomorrow, but I don't know about much more than that in the short term.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, John. I mean, you look at these numbers and they've been accumulating all this data, and they've been very transparent talking about the fact of they're going to take in the data, they're going to make a decision. I think this decision was already made for them. I mean, when we started getting something above 75%, and now here we are at 99%, that they're going to have a quarter point, I think it is the Fed, and it's what we're looking for tomorrow, and that will be the number. And without any other thought, that's going to happen. I can't imagine anything changing that. I think the one other thing that's interesting about this whole thing, John, is so we've got that cut coming, but you look at the 10-year, and that has been steadily just kind of growing and getting a little bit hotter, a little bit higher each and every day. Today we got all the way up to 4.43. We eased off of that, but we were in a 4.43. It wasn't too many days ago we were in the 4.1. So it gives you a little bit of an idea that from a macro perspective, something's going to get done. It will get done. And then we're going to be able to listen to what Powell and what they're going to say in terms of January. Because as of right now, it looks very, very solid that they're going to pause in January, but that could change very fast.
Well, something that is pausing in the crypto sphere, Pete, is Bitcoin. It's down a whole $35 today. So in other words, it's still holding on to 106, so which is virtually unchanged, 106,000 US dollars to the Bitcoin. The one in the space that we don't trade futures on this one at the Merc, so it's not really a futures play, Pete, but continue to keep your eye on XRP Ripple, folks, because that one's up almost 4% again today.
Yeah, people, there's all kinds of crypto out there, and everybody's got their faves and everything else. I'll tell you this, John, from a fantastic futures perspective, and I look at the volatility index, as you know, all the time. I'm always staring at that thing. We were not too terribly long ago, we dipped into the 12s. It didn't last long. We've been in the 13s. Then over the last few days, more and more in the 14s. Today, we hit the middle 15s, John. So there is a little bit of concern out there, I would say, and it's probably warranted. People want to get a little bit nervous when you get closer to the Fed, all of that, and we'll see how this whole thing goes. But we're in the mid-15s, getting people a little bit nervous. There's no doubt about that. I think we'll see if that air starts to come out of that and we get back into the 14s before the end of the day. But we were pushing on it and holding on 15 last I looked. So we'll see if we get there. But it's all about tomorrow. It really is. It's all about Powell.
Yeah, and maybe that's one of the reasons, Pete, that 50 Cent bought all those February 30 calls and sold the February 60 calls. Mm-hmm. Maybe the reason is that he's thinking ahead and thinking that what if it starts to shift a little, the CME tool for watching the Fed, and not that it goes to more likely cuts, but that it just goes solidly into no mosh for a while. So again, keep your eyes open, folks, and your ears. All right, let's talk about Venture Minute, Pete. We've only got one more day for the AdomBeam fundraise. You guys want to scan it with that QR code you see on your screen? You could just go to invest.AdomBeamTech.com, and you could be one of the folks that's investing in that company. Now, they are not AI itself, but they're part of what makes AI work and work more efficiently. Because again, this is something that requires an awful lot of energy, AI, artificial intelligence does. And anybody who can take down the costs for a data center is something that everybody is going to flock to. And this is one of the big winners that we believe is going to turn things around for those data centers. Because if it takes 8 to 15 times the amount of energy to run an AI query, well, that means the data center's got to shoulder that, and then they've got to try to pass on as much of that cost as possible. But if indeed AdomBeam does what it says it does, and we've seen it in action as they're rolling this out, they're able to cut the electricity consumption by as much as 75%, which is massive for a data center. I mean, not everybody's got 100,000 rigs like Elon Musk for Grok, but there's an awful lot of computing power and heat, as well as electricity that get generated, heat that is, and needs to be cooled down to have those machines run more efficiently. So again, you're talking about electricity. And AdomBeam is one of the best solutions that we've seen. We are investors in the company, true believers, and you guys must be believing it too, because you put over $2 million into AdomBeam last week. So if you'd like to get in before it closes tomorrow, folks, go to invest.AdomBeamTech, that's TECH.com. All right, Pete, some pretty cool stuff going on with some of these drones. Now, if you live in New Jersey, you don't want to hear about drones at all, because you've seen so many of them, you're sick of them. And why are they out there? We don't know. The government says it knows what's going on out there, but it won't tell us, which is always disconcerting, especially since we don't really know who's running the government right now. But when you take a look at Redcat, this is a drone maker for the military, folks. And it's really caught a lot of attention over the past little bit. Why? Well, because Redcat drones, whether it's the Black Widow or whatever, are out there helping soldiers win. And these guys just partnered up, Pete, with Palantir, so that Palantir could let them basically autonomously address jamming and all these other things that people try to do to keep drones from doing their job. And we had unusual activity, surprise, surprise, in this one. Back in November, there it is, the 25th of November, stock was $10. They're buying the Dees 10 calls for $1.60. Guess what? Stock went to $12 on the recent highs. So those calls did pretty well for people that followed that one, Pete. What do you think of a drone like this one that's just moved up to it's still under $1 billion. So it's relatively small potatoes in the overall defense scheme.
Yeah, although now that they've had this partnership with Palantir, I think that brings them up another notch. Then easing back, it makes a little bit of sense. There are a lot of shorts out there, John, and so they sometimes get their way. And we had that big spike up, and then it's pulled back just a little bit this morning. It's down maybe 10 or 15%, but it's been on an unbelievable tear. If you go back in the last year, this is a stock that traded at 50 cents all the way up to 12.50. It gives you a little bit of an idea of the massive moves that it was able to make. Now, it's a combination of wars, fires, intelligence, all of the things that this particular company services with the drones. It really is special. Now, they did have, not too terribly long ago, some earnings that really weren't all that great, something that I think would be a little bit concerning, but it didn't stop Palantir from partnering up. And I think the fact that they've got that deal in place, that is going to push this stock even higher into the future. Might take a little bit of time, but I really like this name a lot.
Well, and like to give a salute out to the CEO. He lives down here in Puerto Rico, Pete, and I've seen him out on the harbor flying some drones. Yep. So not 50 or 60 of them like in New Jersey, but I've seen him out there. So good work, sir. You've really 10x'd, just like my hat says. He's 10x'd this company, Redcat. All right, Pete. QUBT. We wanted to hit it yesterday because, gosh, we had unusual activity last Friday. And then we had it again yesterday. There's last Friday. QUBT was $6.50 about. And 3,000 December 7 calls were bought in one print for 55 cents. Well, the stock shot up through 12. So that's a pretty good gain. And then we got a second one, Pete. We got one yesterday, right as we were coming on the show. We got another one that came in with unusual activity. So this is quantum computing. They just got a big deal with NASA. And when you look at where this stock is today, Pete, oh my gosh, look at a couple days worth of this trade. It'll make your eyes water.
Well, it went from 35 cents to over 17.60, John, in the last 52 weeks. That's not such a bad deal. The volumes are absolutely off the charts. You mentioned some of the unusual option activity. This deal that they're making, this contract with NASA, that's going to be huge. When you look at quantum and you look at the speed and the synergies that they've got here, it requires less power. And that you were just talking about this a moment ago, but the power that it takes for all of these various things that we talk about each and every day, whether it be in the AI space or anywhere else, it does take a lot of energy. In this case, it's a lot less energy. And that I think is what really makes me look at this company a little bit longer. It might be at these 52-week highs. It's a big run today. It's tough to buy into something like that. But I think that there's still plenty of room to the upside over time. It doesn't mean it happens tomorrow, but this is a name that I think better be on your board when you're looking, because what they do is something that everybody's looking for. The quantum side of things, that's old news in a way, but the fact that they do it and the energy that it takes, John, which is a heck of a lot less, that's a really big deal, because you and I both know that is the stumbling block right now for everybody.
Well, in 6 months, Pete, how's this return sound? This is the stock now, not options, folks. Options, it's not uncommon to hear a 1,600% return. Now, it doesn't happen every day, but it happens a lot. But stocks, not so much. This one, it did. In the past 6 months, it's up 1,600%. 1,400% in 3 months. So, like Pete said, this one's absolutely gone parabolic, and quantum computing, QUBT, is one of the reasons that we're pretty bullish on the sector right now. But again, like Pete said, we're not saying, oh, but we got to buy it today on a 33% jump. I think you can be a little patient. Maybe that patience will pay off. All right, Pete, what about Affirm? Affirm, this is one that Mark Lepresti, the CEO of Market Rebellion, loves this stock. They've had a huge run this year. They're buy now, pay later, but they're down today, and they're down because they're doing a convertible note. So tell us a little bit about that, if you will, Pete.
Yeah, whenever you do something like that, John, it does sort of get people a little bit nervous about, well, why are you needing to do this? What are you doing? This is This is something that, this is a stock, by the way, if you go back to pre-election, was a $45 stock that ran all the way up to 73, where it was not too long ago. So on this 5% move to the downside, it's a $69 stock. It's right there near that 52-week high. It's been an incredible run. It's had a great year this year. But I think when you look at the huge amount of debt that they've got, the PE, well, there is no E, so there is a problem trying to put together PE. I think you got to know that going in. It doesn't mean that the stock can't go up, because certainly it has. When you look back over the last 6 months or so, that chart looks pretty daggone good from the bottom left to the upper right. That all being said, it still is a company that at some point they've got to show us that they can make earnings, John. They haven't been able to do it yet. I think that if there's a concern out there, that would be the one thing that might hold us back. But if this stock starts to see much more pressure to the downside, not just a 5% move, but a significant move to the downside, I think it's one that you've still got to keep your eye on and say, you know what, at this level, it's a good time. I think right now near that 52-week high, I'm not so sure I want to run after this one.
Well, and I thought, Pete, that the first stopping point would be 66 and change. And I'm not trying to do that with hindsight, folks. I'm just trying to look at the charts and see where support might be. You guys know what support is, the hand under the market, or resistance that's above the market. In this case, it was right at 66 and change. Guess where it got to today, Pete? 66, 67, right there. So
amazing.
Is that the buy? Do you have to buy it there coming off of a $73 high recently? I don't think so, but there's a little bit more support at 63. And if I had my druthers, as in what would I rather? I'd rather buy it at 61. And even though it might not get there, option traders know that you could sell a put if you wanted to. That's not advice. That's what you could do, folks. But if you sold a put at the 66 or 63 or $61 level, you're basically feasting on fear. Somebody thinks it might go there. If it doesn't, you get to keep the whole premium. If it does, you've got a decision to make. Do you want to still own the stock at 61, a stock that on the 52-week looks like 22 to 73? You might not be as anxious to buy at 66, given that. Just kind of breaking it down for him, Pete.
Yep.
All right, one more, and this is in Pete's wheelhouse. This is a company that primarily, Pete, works on generic pharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. It's an Israeli company known as Teva Pharmaceutical, Teva. But they don't just work on that. They've also got an inflammatory bowel disease treatment that actually showed best in class in phase 2. Now that's phase 2. So I'll let Pete take it from there, but they're partnered with a really, really big drug firm, Sanofi, SNY. Yep. And Pete, why is it so important that this is a phase 2 and not a phase 3?
Yeah, the problem is this, timing and what it's going to take from a time perspective to get past phase 2, which it looks like that's just the easiest thing in the world, but you still have to get past 3 and then the next level. So this isn't like this suddenly is a drug that everybody's going to be able to have the opportunity to be able to use. They still got to go through the process. And as they go through that process, you know, all the numbers so far, John, they've reported, they were favorable. And Sanofi is a monster that they can go into this thing with them as a partnership. So I think there's a lot of good things. You mentioned best in class. Yes, best in class. So I look at this, and I also wanted to look at the fundamentals of Teva. I hadn't looked in a while, John. How about this? They've got a PE, price to earnings. They've got a PE in single digits. It's a 6. Their most recent, the most recent earnings that they put out there, they absolutely crushed it on the earnings side. They crushed it on the revenue side. They did everything they needed to do. This is a company that seems to be moving in the right direction, and I think it's one that definitely we should keep a track on, especially because of the fact that right now, John, it's at the highest levels that it's been since all the way back to 2018. So we're seeing the stock make this big move today. I think they can hold on to this, but if it pulls back at all, I think that's time to jump. By the way, had some nice unusual option activity in this one as well, John. So somebody out there was sniffing this thing out, and I think they found the right spot because this stock is ripping today.
Yeah, I mean, up 24% today, folks. It's nearly doubled year on in the past year, and their partner, Sanofi, is 6 times bigger than they are. I'm not saying they got to get bought, but I am saying you've got a partner that's 6 times bigger than you, and you've got a pretty breakthrough drug. Maybe that's a reason that they decide to say, you know what, you should be part of the family. All right, Pete, speaking of family, this guy practically is Pat McAfee. We love him, folks. Whenever we run a Pat McAfee video, you guys text us about how much you love Pat. The guy's absolute phenom. And he has energy, just like Pete, that is rather infectious. So let's listen to what he had to say, Pete, about one of the biggest games, that 1,000-yard game between Buffalo and the Lions on Sunday.
Josh Allen is by far the greatest football player on earth right now. No questions.
On earth.
Everything he's doing is awesome, and he's not turning the ball over.
Look
This was
at him.
always the potential Josh Allen that we
People
thought
don't
could be.
realize
He can
his
throw the ball
speed,
forever,
John.
has an
I mean, he's as
absolute
big as a
hose
tight end,
of an
but
arm.
he's got the
No,
speed
signs
of
would
a
say potential, but
wide
nonetheless,
receiver.
can spin it, and then he can run, and
of
they
an
just
arm.
hammer a Detroit Lions team.
Look at his
He's
arm.
obviously
He didn't even
riddled
look
with
like he
injuries.
tried to
Very,
throw
very
the
good.
ball.
Now, the Buffalo Bills defense, we're going to have to ask some questions because the Rams did what they wanted to do, and then now the Detroit
He
Lions
is
were able to do
professional.
whatever they wanted to do. But this Buffalo Bills team can very much get #1 overall seed, home field advantage. Now, obviously, they're built to win in those conditions this year more
Yeah, they've
so
got
than
the
ever
snow
before.
advantage,
This
John,
guy
'cause
is
they
igniting
don't mind
not
it.
only the Buffalo Bills, but like football. He's definitely going to win the MVP.
He's definitely going to win the MVP. He doesn't mince words.
Well, you know what, John? That is the perfect segue into where we wanted to go, which is who's going to be the MVP this year. And I totally am with Pat McAfee on this one, John. But I'll tell you what, it isn't a 100% layup either, because when you look at it this year, there's the potential for a couple of running backs. Saquon Barkley, not so bad. He's averaging almost 6 a carry, 11 touchdowns, almost 1,700 yards this year, and he's still got some time. And then you look over at Derrick Henry, 1,500 yards, 6 yards a carry, 13 touchdowns. So one of those two guys, it's not going to happen. It's going to be a quarterback, and it's a matter of which quarterback probably. And right now, it's Goff and Josh Allen, because when you look at the records of those teams, I think that becomes a factor in this whole MVP thing. I love seeing what Lamar Jackson can do. His numbers are staggering, 34 touchdowns, John, with 3 interceptions. I mean, who does that? Who goes through this deep into the season with only 3 interceptions? Shoot, most of these quarterbacks playing in the NFL, which is why most of the teams are under 500, probably throw that many in a game, 3 interceptions. So it's amazing what he's been able to do. I think Derrick Henry was part of the reason that when he got him, he got a lot more opportunity as a quarterback, doesn't have to run as much. He's only got 3 touchdowns. And that's where Josh Allen, for me, I think McAfee is right. Look at his numbers. He's got 25 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Those don't really blow you away. But what does blow you away a little bit is he's got 11 rushing touchdowns. And when you showed that clip that McAfee put up there, John, the guy has the speed of a wide receiver. He's got the size of a tight end. He's as tough as a linebacker. And who wants him? If you're a linebacker in the NFL these days, they're much smaller, John, than they once were. You know, when you and I played, your standard linebacker was somewhere between 6'3" and 6'5", probably weighed about 245. Now these linebackers are a lot closer to 6'2" or 6'3", and they weigh about 220. So when you've got Josh Allen running at you at, call it 6'5", maybe even a little bit more, 245, 250 pounds, who has the advantage there? I would say Josh Allen. I think he's going to be the MVP, but I might be missing somebody, John. I love Joe Burrow, but the team can't win. They got no defense. I think the world of the kid. It's just not going to happen this year, despite the fact this is his best year, I think, in the NFL. He's not throwing interceptions. He's only got 8. So he's a great player. I love him to death. You know, I know his brother. I know him. They're really great guys, but I got to give the nod to Josh Allen. What do you think?
Well, you named the two, I think, Pete, Jared Goff and Josh Allen, that should be in the running for MVP. It won't be Jackson again. He's not going to repeat. But that's not to say he's having a terrible year. And Joe Burrow, like you say, I was looking at Grok, you know, Elon Musk's AI, and it has them favorably compared, Burrow and Allen, except, for two things in my mind. Grok didn't say this, but I will. Joe Burrow has had a lot of injuries. Josh Allen has had next to none, Pete. I mean, the kid is strong. So is Burrow, but Burrow's had some, issues with his O-line and so forth. I think he's an incredible passer, but not the same runner, of course, as Josh Allen. And Josh Allen, and for good reason, too. I'm sure the coaches told him just slide because they don't want to have him hurt again. Right. And I think Saquon Barkley is a great player and deserving of it as well. I think Goff is going to have a hard time if it's Goff. And I don't even know, Pete, after last night, the Vikings playing 50, at 50%, because they sure weren't turning on the Jets last night like they could have. But if they played at half speed last night, they could give Detroit or Green Bay everything they can handle, because they've got speed, they've got all those receivers, a great offensive line, very good defense for a change. And by the way, Detroit's injured. And Montgomery, that loss of Montgomery is huge. So we'll see if they can reload at the running back spot. But that kid was special, and he's gone for the year. He's gone, and hopefully comes back strong next year. But I think you're right. Josh Allen wins the MVP, but I don't know who beats him, Pete.
Right. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, you are so right about last night and just getting a chance to watch some of the Viking game and see how good they really look right now. And I think if you go back and you look at Detroit, they look great except on defense. I mean, they're still managing to score the points that they did. But the problem is the entire defense, it feels like, is hurt. And it all started right at the beginning with Hutchinson, who was literally having, one of those years where he's in a conversation for being the best defensive player in football for sure. And then all of a sudden he gets hurt, he's gone, they had to replace him and move on. So that makes it really a struggle, I think. If they can't get healthy quick, Detroit might have a bit of an issue, particularly on the defensive side. All right, John, how about in the offseason this past year? Now, who had the best signing of anybody in the offseason? And I got to eat a lot of words on this one, but I'm willing to do it. So the Vikings get out there, and what do? They draft a quarterback. They go up, they got the number 10 pick, and they grab J.J. McCarthy. And they're pretty excited about that. They should be. He's a heck of a quarterback. He got hurt in the preseason, and he looked like he was ready to be the starter. Well, the one thing about the best signing, I think, in the entire offseason is Sam Darnold really did make the right decision, John, when he chose to come to the Minnesota Vikings, right over here. Let me tell you something. Here's what he was able to walk into, which I think if you're a quarterback and a guy like Sam Darnold, who he got drafted really, really high about 6-7 years ago. And when he got drafted, John, when you go high, that means you go to a pretty pathetic place. So he had nobody to play with when he was with the Jets and with Carolina. And it really was, very difficult on him. Well, he comes to a team this year. Let's see. J.J. McCarthy, he's a number 25 pick in the first round, wide receiver. Not J.J. McCarthy, Justin Jefferson. Then you've got Addison, number 23 in the same draft. Naylor, number 22 in a first round in the draft. He's got 3 first-round wide receivers. He's got Hawkinson at tight end. He's got a decent offensive line. We did lose the left tackle this past couple of weeks ago, but he's got it all, John. And so we're starting to look at this guy and go, well, wait a minute. This guy, he's not MVP, but 29 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 67% completion. And he went to the right team, and it was probably the best free agent signing I have seen in a long time. The only dispute going on here in Minnesota now, John, is what do you do with him at the end of the year? He's got a 1-year contract. Do you, and this is maybe the best question for you, you and I are financial guys, does he get a $30 million a year contract, maybe over 3 years, so it's $90 million? Or what do you do with the guy? Do you let him leave? Because he's free if you don't. And then you've got to decide, is J.J. McCarthy going to be healthy enough? Is he going to be right? Is he at the right time? So what do you think the Vikings should do? What would you do if you were the GM? Do you have to sign him?
You don't have to, because there's other quarterbacks out there that, are going to be looking. And could you plug and play them just like this guy? Because, obviously he didn't know the offense until he got there. So he's not had years and years of experience and friendships with all these players and all that kind of stuff that makes a difference. The friendships, not as much as knowing how, when the guy cuts, when he looks and things like that. Because there were a couple near misses last night where he threw the ball a little flat, I thought, Pete. One over the middle to Justin Jefferson, credit to Troy Aikman, he called it. He threw the ball flat rather than letting him run to it. He drilled it, and it went right by him, and he reached out to get it, but it was too far out in front of him. Took that much off of it as, he would have if he'd been playing with him for 2 or 3 years. That's a catch and probably a touchdown, because he's running against the defense coming the other way, and knowing Justin Jefferson, he probably goes. But I think you got to sign him. I think he's done too well. He's a young guy. It's not like he's some, our Aaron Rodgers or something like that, where you're worried about the age. Does he have anything left in the tank? This guy obviously does have a lot left, and he's played virtually every snap this year, except when they've taken him out for, mop-up time. So I think you sign him. And if McCarthy comes back strong, Pete, well, then you got a decision to make. Do you trade him at that point? And that's a, like they say, game time decision.
Here's the scariest part, John. Do we have a pretty good quarterback room? Because we also got the quarterback from the Giants, who, granted, now he struggled for sure, but Daniel Jones is a great athlete. He really, truly is a great athlete. So he's sitting in the quarterback room. You got J.J. McCarthy there, and then Sam Darnold, who's having, as you and I were just saying, one heck of a year. So that might be one of the best quarterback rooms in all of the NFL, I would say, because I think from the looks of things, all three of them could start on quite a few different teams in the NFL.
Yeah, that's true. Well, folks, thank you for tuning in to the Rebel's Edge. Remember, you can scan the little QR code that's right there at the bottom of the screen. Yeah, there it is, right down there. Jared put up a little arrow for me. You can scan that QR code, get your ticket to Vegas. It's going to be fabulous. March 22nd with Grant Cardone and a whole bunch of our friends that'll be there for the 22nd, and a whole bunch of celebrities the 20th and 21st. That's one thing Grant does. He brings the heat. And so we appreciate all of you. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. See you then.